Okay, so a lot of the work that, or the work that we're showing today is on the screen. So don't just focus on me, but please focus on the screens. And I'm starting off with a slide of the Earth. And I have to tell you that I am an Earth enthusiast. Okay, I love the Earth, and I think we all do. And I just want to put this in context. We live in a universe that is ginormous, that is as huge, that nobody really can understand. It's not fathomable how big it is. The trillions of galaxies and stars and black holes and planets and all the other stuff that we probably don't know about. But there's only one planet in all of this enormity that has got life in it. And we're part of that life. And actually, in the past and in the present, we're screwing up things, and pretty badly as well. So my job is trying, as a landscape architect and as a human being, to try and solve some of these problems. An interesting thing about this blue marble, which we call it, is that it was first photographed in 1967. And in order to photograph the moon and see it in this enormity of the of the universe, you've got to be 20,000 miles away from the Earth. And only about 20 people have ever seen that, have traveled that kind of far on the way to the moon, etc. The other thing that's interesting as well is that the first ecological course was started in 1968, and I'm sure there's something actually about it. We started to understand how important our planet was and that we need to actually protect it. So I'm going to be talking to you about bombing, but of course not the kind of bombing here, which I have a photograph of the Vietnam War and what's happening today, but trying to follow nature as well as nature-based solutions, to try and see how we can use nature's way of actually rehabilitating or recreating habitats that have been lost. And that's the main kind of theme of what I'm talking about today. So we know that climate change happens. I know we still think that Donald Trump probably doesn't think climate change is happening, but it is happening. And the climate change that is happening affects everywhere. And the two places I'm going to be talking to you about is kind of East Africa and Kenya, and then Southeast Asia. But climate change is affecting us much closer to home. So this is a map of Portugal that you can see. The redness that you can see is the desertification that's happening. And the desertification is just not on a map, it's reality. You can see this landscape in southern Spain where the ecosystem services, in other words, the production of nature, is being destroyed. It cannot produce anything for the environment or wildlife or biodiversity, and it cannot produce anything for us because of all sorts of reasons, because basically poor land management and drought and desiccation of the land. And then we get to China and places like this, you cannot survive. People cannot survive in any of this. Going to Africa, which is the kind of one of the main themes of today, it's so remarkable that there are people today who are pastoralists, who are carrying on a tradition that's been happening for tens of thousands of years, taking their cattle, their goats, their camels, and across vast plains. And this is what they've been doing. But this is being threatened, okay? Here's an example of some poor guy who, he can't live like this. The animals can't live like this. So we've got to do something. And when we have too many animals and too many people wanting the same water, wanting the same grazing, we end up with problems. We end up with social problems, never mind the economic and environmental problems. And these problems, unfortunately, are sometimes solved by the gun. Okay, so these days, easy enough to get a Kalashnikov and solve your problem that way. This is the kind of setting that we want. This is the kind of scene that we want. We want to go back to green pastures where everybody can live happily. The cattle can live happily, the wildlife can live happily, the people can live happily. But this is what we've got. This is the reality. And we're talking about vast expanses of land. If you see it from a satellite photograph, we're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kilometers. And we can't solve this by doing it by hand. Looking down at ground level, you can see the erosion that's created. And this is only going to get worse and worse and worse. And erosion is going to not only affect the ground flora and the shrubs, etc., but eventually this tree, which is kind of, you can see the red line there, is also going to disappear. So it affects the people who live there. These pastoralist people, the Samburu, for example, who have these huts, etc., live in these huts, move with their cattle. This woman I met, etc., is one of the people of the tribe. This affects them deeply. And what happens when they cannot live off the land, when they cannot move their cows because there's no grasses left, etc., some of them, and this is my conjecture, some of them will go to the local city to try and find a job. They can't get a job there, and they will head north, perhaps to Europe, to North America, wherever it is, to try and get some money to send back home. So we know that we can restore restoration. The systems are in place to restoration, but we need a much bigger kind of scale. Here, for example, is an area in the Baringo, county. We saw an aerial photograph that a little while ago, and you can see here that we can restore this grassland. There are the systems in place with the authorities who have nurseries, there are NGOs who are in place who are producing seeds or getting local people to get the seeds, etc. You'll see there's a little seed in there which looks like a fan. It's called Maasai lovegrass, and we're going to talk about that a little later. And also, we need the cooperation of the societies to do this. You could not do it without the cooperation of local people, but they do cooperate. And this is an example of an acacia tree, which is very, very important as a fodder tree. The pods fall down, and they collect them, and they use it for cattle feed. This sign on the tree says, "You dare not touch this tree, or otherwise the tribe will be after you." And so there is sanction on that. And so we could create all this grassland. We could keep it fallow, etc., not have cattle on it for 2 years, etc., and reproduce this. We can also do it mechanically, but you cannot see this hydroseeder going into the bush and out, hundreds of kilometers into the bush. It just wouldn't work. Okay, so what can we do on such a vast scale? This idea I had of dropping the seeds from the sky, I took it to a local school. And you ask kids. If you want to get the truth about something, you ask kids. And one of these children, I had obviously lots of drawings. One of the children said, well, you get 2 planes. The first plane, you fill it full of seeds, and you drop the seeds. And the second plane, you fill it full of water, and you drop water on the seeds. It's absolutely right. But we don't want 2 planes. Basically, what we want to do is drop the seeds at the right time, and then hopefully it will rain, and then the seeds will sprout. Another one, which is one of my best drawings in the world, is this kid came up with this amazing copter, which is going to have 1 billion seeds in it. Now we're talking serious. 1 billion seeds. And when he's finished dropping these 1 billion seeds, he's going to go back and collect another 1 billion. And that's the scale that we need to do it on. And we cannot do it by hand. So the big idea, in order to cover large areas, we have to drop the seeds from the sky, and in order for them to survive, we need to put them in packages. So dropping them from the sky, we can use planes, we can use helicopters, we can use microlights, we can even use balloons, which I kind of like that idea. And of course, with drone technology, and it has advanced so much, we can use drone technology as well, and that's the idea. So what will we drop from the sky? Packages of some kind. And my first idea was, this is my first drawing, is we're going to use tea bags. I thought it was brilliant. I approached the tea company and said, sponsor me. I'm going to go and save the world and the planet, and we're going to drop tea bags with seeds, etc. Yeah, you can imagine the tea company. I won't mention names here, but you can imagine the tea company I approached. They said, are you crazy? Go away. But there are problems with tea bags because most of them, although they say they're biodegradable, they don't degrade fast enough. And then we've got seed bombs. That's a great idea. We have guerrilla gardeners who throw seed bombs into places where they want things to grow. Problem with this is you really need to go and get some of the soil from the place where you want to make the seed bombs, and it's complicated to do that. You can use charcoal, and that's one of the ways to do it. People are doing that. A great idea of mine is to use medicine capsules. Problem with that, it can be fiddly. And medicine capsules aren't designed to dissolve in water. They dissolve in your acid in your stomach. And rain is, unless we have acid rain, it's not going to work. PVA. Now, PVA is this amazing material which actually dissolves on contact with water. This is a strange kind of netting that you can buy if you're a fisherman. Anybody out there is a fisherman, you can make these packages of fish bait and stuff like that. But if you fill this with seeds or with manure or something like that, then we can drop these from the sky. They'll fall on the ground. When it rains, it dissolves absolutely immediately. But my piece de resistance is kind of the washing capsule, and we can make these with seeds, with manure, with fertilizer, with water retention granules, and we can drop these onto the ground. When the rains come, this will disappear and we'll have our grassland. We can also have paper-based, a simple way of doing it, gluing seeds to a piece of paper, and we can actually spray fertilizer on the paper and drop them from the sky like this. We can use we can use maple-type seeds as well to kind of make them float down beautifully and gently from the sky, and I did some of those. And we can use loop paper, as I suggested earlier. We can kind of get it wet. It's biodegradable. We can fluff it up once it's wet and make it into seed bombs. And I reckon if we can make 1,000 kilos of this, which is a ton, it's not a huge amount, we can make 2.5 million seed bombs like this very, very readily. I had some students in the Southeast Kenya University helping me do this, and using the Maasai lovegrass, which we spoke about earlier, and here you can see some of the seed bombs. I wanted to use a drone to drop them, but we couldn't because there was a moratorium on bringing in drones into Kenya because they were worried about tourism. But we dropped some of these seeds, and then we also placed some of the ground to test them. And we were very successful with some of the packages. And now, I'm going to move on. Some were completely different, a totally different problem, but also using kind of the sky as the answer and using drones as the answer. So recently I just went to Indonesia and to the Philippines. Indonesia in the yellow. You can see Java, the island there, the kind of flat one. And then up in the pink is the Philippines. The problem there is totally different. It's also got to do with climate change and basically sea level rises and greater winds and typhoons, etc. What people did is they took out the mangroves. Okay, we all heard about mangroves, and I've got some mangroves in my hand. And they took out the mangroves in order to make fish ponds and shrimp ponds, etc. And some people became very rich out of it. But what happened was, by taking out the mangroves, the water quality that was coming into the ponds was poor, and over time, until now, these fish ponds and everything that was meant to make money for these people, for the local people, as well as these kind of entrepreneurs, it's all gone down the tubes, okay? And the worst thing that's happened, this flooding has occurred with the ingress of water. So the last slide here, is in Indonesia. You can see what happened. And this is affecting, again, local people and their industry. And so this is in the Philippines. This is the kind of pathway that they've had to put in a flooded area for a fisherman or for a worker to go to his fields. And this is the big kind of engineering that they've got to put in so the waters that's coming in, which was protected by the mangroves, is not going further inland. So that you can see the problem is huge. It's affecting, the local villages, their rice fields, their banana fields, and just the infrastructure that's there. And the mangroves are really, really important for them because they also produce food and produce, which they can sell. These are sea cucumbers. I know they don't look very appetizing to us, and probably less appetizing are these fish. But they make money of it. They're used to this. This is what you can get out of the mangroves. And the mangroves are also very, very important as a nursery for all the fish that are going to go out into the sea and become people's dinners in the future, so for fisheries as well. Mangroves are important, of course, for wildlife species, especially birds, and also for tourism. So people go to these islands on holiday to get married, to get engaged and all sorts of things. And then when that's kind of a little bit boring, they go and visit mangroves and things because it's very interesting. And there are other ecosystem services products that come out of mangroves. This is mangrove juice. It's an acquired taste. Okay. But you also get honey and charcoal. So, it's producing very, very important stuff for the local people. Mangroves, of course, have been restored for the last 20 years. But on such a slow scale, there's just been a report by the Philippine government saying they cannot see any difference between what's happened, measurable. It's measurable to an extent, but it's not measurable to what they wanted to achieve. They couldn't do it. This slide just basically shows some of the infrastructure that's been built for tourists. This is a restored mangrove over 20 years old. In the Philippines and in Indonesia, they have 40-odd species of mangroves. That's quite a lot out of the 75 that around the world. Here we go. We've got some other kinds of seeds and flowers of mangroves, which are kind of beautiful and weird at the same time. The canopy. And you can see I've got some of this big red mangrove, what's called a propagule. But the other mangroves are more like traditional kind of seeds that we know. And here's a picture of the ones I'm holding in my hand, which actually would fall down into the mud. It's really quite sharp. These are a little bit desiccated at the moment. You can see on the left-hand slide some of the propagules that fall into the mud and are sprouting. And on both of those photographs, you see the kind of, what the characteristics of mangroves with their roots sticking into the sky. Here's mangroves that have been planted, but much too closely, so the local people can't get in there to get all the produce that they really want to do. And here's some examples of where we would be planting mangroves with drones, and etc. And some of the money-making fish ponds which were created by taking out mangroves, and we're intending to put back those mangroves because these are useless now, and we're going to get more flooding, more disasters, etc. Again, some more mangroves, but they're also being planted too close together. What I'm saying to you, actually, in order for us to make a difference, both in Africa and both in Southeast Asia, we cannot just keep doing it by hand. We need the technology, but we need the nature-based solutions to do it. And so what I'm saying to you is that nature knows a thing or two, and that all good things come from heaven. And so I will say to you, and I've got it written on my hand because I'm not a specialist in spells, earth enthusiastus. Okay, thank you. Thank you.